You let me know. Well, at least one of us is.
Were you outside? Oh, for practice.
Always, yeah.
Okay. Here, game on.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order of the Zoning Board of Appeals. April 1st, 2025. Roll call.
Dave Breeden here.
Tim Hamilton here.
Mike Schlossberg here.
Noah Demarest here.
Okay, so we have a quorum. Do we have to approve the minutes?
You should.
Yes.
Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting?
So moved.
Dave makes an emotion. Second,
I'll second.
questions? Did you want to see the minutes?
No.
Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carries. All right, we have an area variance application. Who is here representing that? You are? You're James? Okay, James, tell us what you want to do in the Cliff Notes version, and then we'll ask some questions for clarification. We'll move from there.
Cliff Notes version, I want to demolish and rebuild an existing garage structure. And when it's rebuilt, it will be moved like 2 feet or so further away from the property line to hit that 5-foot offset. And then also it will have a second story on it with a dwelling. I think that's.
And moved back.
Yes, and move back.
Right, right. And the dwelling unit you're putting in is the reason we're here for the variance.
Well, it's a combination, since the dwelling unit is going in, that changes the setback.
Right, it's a setback issue. The 5-foot setback is for an accessory building, but once there's a dwelling unit, it's now has a different setback,
I see.
which is fine. Just so we're clarified what we're talking about, because typical accessory building, you wouldn't need a variance with your 5 feet that you're doing. But when you put a dwelling in, a second dwelling, is it 15 feet, I believe? We'll look at the numbers.
Yeah.
It's 15.
Yeah.
When Mr. Lynch could apply for a variance based on the setback, it's 2.5 feet, 3 feet, something like that. Except New York State Fire Code says any dwelling has to be a minimum of 5 feet from the property. That's my understanding of why it's being.
Unless it's protected,
Yeah,
right? You could have no windows and
Yeah.
fire rate that wall, right? Less than
Okay.
5 feet.
a type 1.
Yeah.
But that has nothing that doesn't have anything to do with what our setbacks are anyway. Our setbacks are larger than that to not have to address the issue of under 5 feet. Other than the commercial district, right? Okay. Pretty much same square footage of footprint. As I read this.
Close. I made it a little bit longer, it goes a little bit deeper, than the current.
Okay,
And I made it even numbered instead of.
okay.
That's
All right, and the height of the structure,
It would be 2 stories.
Right.
So, and then with the roof line, so I don't know, maybe 24, 28. feet high.
okay,
Under 35.
right, okay. Just make sure when we talk about it, that we look at all the things that are relevant that we have to consider. And I don't recall, what's the square footage approximately of your house?
Approximately 2,300.
On 2 floors? Okay. And this one would then be, what's your square footage on this?
36 foot.
That's 2 stories. What's that? Oh, for like each floor. Yeah, and then it's 2 floors. Okay, all right. I didn't review to see in second dwelling units if there's I think it's total footage we have to be concerned about for lot size, not primary being larger than secondary. I don't remember,
Yeah.
it's changed so often.
Yeah, but they're fine.
Yeah.
In that respect.
Okay,
It seems
And
low.
I'm assuming lot coverage is fine too. I didn't see a calculation on that, but I don't think it's
I think so.
anywhere close.
Just want to make sure we don't get into something where we miss something that we have to just review when we look through the different codes on this. Gentlemen, you have any other questions particularly for him right now on the issue? Any
I
additional
didn't
questions?
see an elevation, the east elevation, you showed the west elevation. Is the east elevation gonna look similar or is there? I'm sure-
So I didn't show the east elevation because the idea was that there probably would not be windows or maybe one window on the outside.
Mhm.
The previous meeting, there was concern about privacy issues with neighbors.
Mhm. Okay. I mean, I would be in favor of some windows and maybe they're like windows into the garage or something on the first floor or something like that, but that's not a fan of blank walls, put it that way.
And you're talking the blank wall being on the property line side.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
Tony Hanson's on.
What's that?
Tony Hanson.
Oh, okay. Any other questions before we open up to public hearing? Can I have a motion to open up public hearing? Mike makes it,
I'll second.
Noah seconds it. Any questions? All in favor of opening public hearing, say aye. Opposed, the same? All right, do we have anybody here who would like to speak to the project? All right, if you stand up to the microphone and just give us your name,
This also helps the recording.
that's why we do the microphone.
I'm Barb Morley. I am an owner of the adjacent property, 39 Week Street. And I appreciate the chance to ask you some questions and raise some issues. I like the idea of bringing elder family members into the neighborhood. I think that's great. I didn't realize when I looked at the plan on the web, or we had discussions earlier, that the official law says the setback is 15 feet. So that's new information for me to process. One of the problems that we have on Wig Street, or on our block of Wig Street, which is longstanding, is that rainwater and snow melt roll down house to house down the block. And so I have concern about the rain coming off the roof, going into the middle of the yard, for example, in near the bird plan. That there be a catchment of some sort, so that it's, it disperses slowly, especially because the tree to the west of the house is part of the rain maintenance cycle right now, the roots and the leaves, part of the catch and release of rainwater. So taking that out will shift that burden of rainwater going down the street some. So that's the question for me. As are the well-being of the other trees that are on the boundary between our driveways. That they maintain that good slope and that they help with the rainwater dispersal. I'm concerned, I guess, about removing the existing slab for the driveway and putting in a new deeper foundation that you need for the two-story building. How that would affect the slope. It seems like we'll destabilize that ground very close to the boundary line. And I'm wondering about processes for stabilizing that, both in the removal and in the construction and the second story building. I'm also concerned about the building's use and the long-term impact on the neighborhood. And that is, as I said before, I'm glad to have both elders and young families in the neighborhood. When we lived there, it was a really nice mix. This investment in additional living space, I'm wondering what it will be used for when family members who need it are no longer needing it. Again, sometimes you've got a college kid who's between places and needs a spot to land for a little bit, or you've got an elder who needs to be closer to home for some comfort, community care. But I would be disappointed to have an Airbnb as part of that arrangement or other short-term rental uses. I think that it is pretty well known that short-term rentals can be lovely, but they also can be noisy and dirty, and that would be hard on the neighborhood, I think, and particularly hard on people living next door. In addition to that, the parking is difficult. Not having a dedicated parking spot for that building as it is may be no problem at all for an elder living there, not knowing if they have a car or expect to be driving. But again, the long-term use. I don't know if the village has regulations on, let's call them Airbnbs. Or how they monitor or enforce that, how those regulations are monitored or enforced, but I would be disappointed to have an Airbnb possible, not necessarily with Jim in that house, but the next owner of the house and the owner after that. Monitoring and enforcing those sorts of things are difficult. And I think that it changes the nature of the neighborhood pretty dramatically, especially with the limited amount of parking and as close as the buildings are.
All right, thank you very much.
I was just starting on the 13 South Street. I've been in that house for 40 years, and there have been several structures that have been either replaced and the new one has come in its place, or it's a brand new one on Wig Street. I think I counted up 5 different ones at times, so there's been a lot of additional construction or replacement, and all of them have turned out very nicely. They're a big improvement. This particular garage is exactly in that. My main concern is traffic and parking on Main Street and South Street. Quite a few years ago, they decided that you could park on, I guess it would be the south side of the street, and put up signs that say park fully off of the street. That does not happen very often, particularly if it's, something family, people like that. And in this particular case, I don't know if there's gonna be enough on-street parking for, to accommodate, whoever the live there, I'm sure family. So that where do they park? And if you've seen the house, you can't park in front of the house because there's a ditch. And the same in front of park where Alice lives, it's a deep ditch, so you have no choice of just parking in front of the house. So my concern is when we add these other unit living units, that we have appropriate parking spaces for the people who live there and visit there. And, as you know, if you look at the street, there's tremendous amount of foot traffic through this children. And lots of cars, lots and lots of cars, because parents drive their children to school, and there's a big line, et cetera. And so I'm just concerned about parking in Wig Street and especially blocks of South Street.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Anyone online?
Nobody online. No
Okay.
written comments submitted.
No written comments? All right, can I have a motion to close the public hearing? Dave, second? Have a second? Oh,
I'll
no,
second.
very good. Somebody can jump in and get a first. Any discussion, any questions about the motion to close public hearing? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, the same. Motion carries. All right, let's, I want to open the section on, what page is it? Residential zoning, dimensioning 302. Make sure we cover all the bases of what we need to consider. 1 or 2 dwelling units, 7,500 square feet, minimum lot frontage 50 feet, front yard setback, side yard setback is 15 feet, accessory building 5 feet. When you get to, front set, let's see, where is it? Where is it with, looking for the number? Where it talks about 15 feet for second unit.
That should be in the dimensional requirements,
Yeah, I'm trying to see.
302.
Principal building.
So it has a different amount of units up there.
Right, but this is the 1 or 2 dwelling units.
Okay.
Just saying principal building. I'm trying to see where it actually says secondary building.
They've changed that nomenclature.
Or what are they calling it?
It's based on the use. So, you know.
Okay, so principal is a living dwelling unit. And so if you have more than one, they both have the same. Is that what you're saying in the
Yeah,
definition?
accessory.
Okay.
Is accessory to, use is accessory to
Okay.
the principal building.
Okay. Let's walk through. Just some of the 5 conditions and see what jumps up as an issue. Undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the area variance. What say you?
Not as currently proposed. I would be interested to hear what the board has to say about, or whether it's legitimate for us to consider future uses like Airbnb.
Has any work been done? Anybody know work being done on Airbnb, like regulations, requirements? Are they working? Is that being worked on? Because it's not part of our zoning code now.
It has been discussed in detail, but no proposed actions other than monitoring the number of units, which is what we're sort of keeping an eye on that. And the county, I guess, is reporting that regularly, right? So, and now the state is changing or requiring that across the state. as well.
I heard there was concern about the idea of Airbnbs that were not owner occupied as on the properties. So they're more like Verbos, where,
Yeah.
you know, it's just a house available for people to rent and there's not an owner.
Right. I mean, the concern is there. What we have seen, and I don't have, maybe Dave remembers the exact numbers, but the number of units that are actually listed is pretty small. It's like,
In the village.
it's like 10 or
I think
something.
it's 20.
Is it 20?
It's relative.
It depends on the activity level too, because there might be 20 total, but they're not all active all the time.
It seems
Right.
to not be increasing at an alarming rate.
Right.
We've been sort of tracking it over time
Mhm.
with the
Right.
county's help.
Right.
And it's not as frightening as I had thought.
Well, and I think the committee that's working on the zoning has decided that should those numbers change, then we'd reopen and have a discussion
Okay.
about how to regulate that. So I think to your point of like, maybe not today, whatever we do today may not impact the ability to do short-term rental, but the village board could certainly address that in other ways later,
Mhm.
should it become a problem. In other words, it's sort of above and beyond this, I think, this board.
Yeah, I agree. That's what I'm seeing as well. I mean, as stated now, I think. That would not be that. The neighborhood. You know, there was always a chance, and the fact that, you know, there is a process that's being worked on and it's being considered. Something to consider.
I was part of the zoning revision when we spent a great amount of discussion on in-law temporary units. And they put that all into the zoning that they could bring in like a trailer for a temporary period. But then the comprehensive plan, the new one came out and says, let's just encourage people to have a unit for parents, college student and stuff like that as part of our density program. Not necessarily thinking through, they would then become short-term rentals and Airbnb because that was still taking off.
Right.
So again, and it sounds like we're at least addressing that this might be the next hurdle that will be addressed, even in the midst as they're writing it now and watching the data.
Right.
As far as your question is, future use should never be a determining factor of what someone or a next buyer might do. Because you can only work with what the applicant is attempting to do and what they're seeking to do. And not what someone might want to do as a future owner.
And it's worth considering that there's no reason that the entire 37 Wig Street house could not become Airbnb.
I was just gonna say the
Right,
same
exactly.
thing.
Exactly.
Why is your worry about the ADU and the whole freaking house, the
Yeah,
one next to it, the
yeah.
one next to it, could all.
Right, and especially when you consider potential impact. I mean, renting the entire house has much larger potential
Right.
noise and whatever parking than a 1-bedroom unit above a garage.
Well, and talking about parking too, one of the things I've noticed in my own personal experience with people who have rental units on their property with their own primary residence is they have a great concern about the parking because they live there.
Right.
And so they figure out how they're going to do it.
Yeah.
If they're going to rent their, their basement out and they live there as well, how they're going to figure out the parking. And again, when you don't have absentee owners, then there's a greater care about that. So in the character of the neighborhood, apart from there's no restrictions on the size of the building in a sense, because it fits the parameters of what you're allowed to do, the height of the building. Wig Street, everything's close. I mean, every structure's close. The present garage, I'm assuming, is 2.5 feet or so from the property line. And presently now, when the water comes off the roof,
Yeah.
it dumps into your yard and then it dumps onto the property line, right? Right. There's no gutters or anything probably now. And so anything you build taller, if we gutter it, it's going to be less impact if it's drained in the right direction. That'll get to the next one about the environmental things. But aesthetically,
I just want to point out, obviously, Wig Street and large parts of Trumansburg have barn structures in the backyard. It's very characteristic of the neighborhood. So,
and even
this
new
feels
ones
like
are
that.
being built, on Halsey. They
Right.
built the new one there. They built the barn before they
Right.
built the house. And
Right.
they wanted to. It seems pretty common. People want a lot of storage and big buildings, but
There was the comment, I think, about what happens in that space between the building and the property line,
Mhm.
which I think is a valid concern, because right now that building is sort of retaining, the existing building sort of retaining the property, the edge. And so now you have 5 feet. So that is a question, and I know you're a professional, so you'll figure this out, but I am kind of curious, what is that just sloping gently over those 5 feet? Is there a wall gonna go back in to hold that? Or like, what does that look like? But I don't know if it's time to answer questions like that, but I just wanted to throw that out.
we're really in the discussion
Yeah.
phase. So if you want to get an answer, as I look at this photo here, where you're looking at the driveway, we're talking this little space to the right of the garage doors that we're talking about. Right now it's 2.5, that'll become 5. Is there like a huge slope there to the next? I'm assuming of the property next to it, that's a garage as well.
A shed.
It's a shed. That's your property. Okay. So like your shed is really close, like the two of you, your buildings are like downtown.
Yeah.
You got the alley between you. Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not straight across.
Probably 3 feet across.
The elevation of your garage and your garage is off. They're not
Right,
level.
exactly.
They're separate.
Right. Yeah. We can kind of tell that. Okay.
Yeah.
The neighborhood itself, is this going to change the real character of the neighborhood? A
No.
2-story garage type unit in the back. Okay, adding, it's a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, living room, kind of, was it in the drawings what it kind of looks like? I mean, as far as,
Just the bubble diagram, but the idea would be like, imagine a studio apartment.
okay, yeah, okay, here I'm looking at, it. Living space is all one and then the bathroom. Yeah. So again, we're not, yeah, within the living space, we're not looking at like, renting it out to a family of 4,
No.
fitting in that space. There'll be a kitchen,
A kitchen.
right? Is there gonna be a kitchen?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fine. Yeah. Okay. And again, to the character of the neighborhood, I'm thinking it's not gonna necessarily produce 3 or 4 additional cars. At the most, 1 car, if a person lives there, has their own car. Again, for changing the character of the neighborhood. How long is your driveway?
Not exactly sure, but probably around 70 feet or so, 80 feet.
Okay, so multiple vehicles could sit in your driveway if you're willing to shuffle?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And it looks like your new driveway will be, you'll have enough of a double width in order to make the turn to go in.
Yeah, that was actually helped by pushing the building back.
Gives you a little more space to have that. Okay,
And to just point out, and I think maybe we talked about this last time, if you were to push it to the 15 feet, I guess this is another later point.
that's fine.
You probably couldn't get the cars because it would be so far away and sort of a pinch point, right, with your house. It seems like it would be a really weird S curve to try to park.
Should I?
Yeah, we're in our discussion phase. We're not making any rulings.
So when you say push it 15 feet, you mean push it 15 feet
From the side yard to make it compliant.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously you could put this new structure 15 feet away from the property line, and you could figure out ways to make it work. But it would basically remove our backyard.
Right.
So if that was the case, then we just wouldn't be interested in doing it.
Mhm.
Right. And just thinking through this a little bit more, because you have 2 cars in there. So let's say you pushed it 15 feet from the property line, you were compliant, you could get 1 car driving straight in on the right-hand side. The left side might be hard to squeeze in there. But that kind of brings me to another question is how is having 2 cars in the garage a critical aspect of this plan? Is that a driver for the whole project overall to house 2 cars?
Yeah, I mean, just to make it easier for winter time.
Sure.
in Cars,
Mhm.
it's just something that we have now, which we enjoy.
Mhm.
I mean, I, speaking of car shuffling, I was thinking about, well, what if you just have 1 garage door, but it's like double deep?
Right.
You always
Yeah,
have to
yeah,
like
yeah,
back
yeah,
that
yeah,
car,
yeah.
but, you know, obviously, if we're gonna be building from new, it's like, okay, well, what can we do? And that's sort of-
There's a point in my mind, the character of the neighborhood is they put their sheds and garages as close to the property line as you can because they're narrow lots. Right?
Right.
That's the character of the neighborhood. To make you put it in the middle of your backyard is like going against the character of the neighborhood. Someone would look at it and go, what in the world did you do that for? The only reason it would have to move is because we're talking about the dwelling unit, and the reason the dwelling unit might be a difficulty is again, parking, adding cars to the character of the neighborhood. Not that you have a tall structure that doesn't change the character of the neighborhood. So in my mind, building what you're building doesn't change the character of the neighborhood. A tall garage-like structure sitting close to the property line is what everybody has in that neighborhood. But different in every neighborhood around, but we try and do what's happening in each neighborhood. We'll come back to that when we actually make a decision on each. The second one is, the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible other than the area variance. We just talked about that. Moving it 15 feet is feasible. Is it desirable? Is it, I think it violates the character of the neighborhood. I think, you know.
I'm going to push back a little bit on this one because I wonder if there is an alternative plan that does, let's say, 24 by 24 garage, exactly where drawn, 5 feet from the property line, and then a 1-story extension out the back that's on the ground floor. that's stepped back 15 feet from the property line. So it's attached to, it's all one-story structure. I'm just thinking of like, how could you do something that is compliant? And what would the impact of that be relative to the
Well, the impact to me, you're building more
relative to the
foundation.
backyard? Well, yeah, I mean, there's potentially cost impacts. I'm thinking specifically about the backyard. Your comment about like moving the whole structure over takes away the backyard. But could you not move it over, but move it further back?
I mean, it's also more impermeable area. Right, and more.
More roof.
rainfall- Yeah, more
Yeah,
rainfall going into
good
that.
point.
Yeah, all those things.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I
potentially
was
more costs.
Pretty well, they didn't raise the alternative that Noah just raised, but the four layouts they did show us with four other possibilities.
Mhm.
And the discussion of why they didn't work, I thought was thoughtful.
Mhm.
Um,
I agree. I mean, I think the one that is shown is better than the
Yeah.
others.
All right, let's move to the next one. Is the area variance substantial? It is. It's 10 feet out of 15, so that's substantial, but that doesn't necessarily negate the ability to do that.
Mhm.
Again, I think as you keep coming back to the character of the neighborhood, everybody's close. The fact that we're putting some living people in it is the only reason you can't have a 2-story garage right there without any kind of a variance. It's because our definition says if you're gonna have living people, and is that more fire code issues?
For the 5 feet.
Yeah.
Yes, that's fire code.
No, well, you said the state allows the 5 feet,
Right.
but the state wouldn't require the 15 feet. They don't have to do anything special with us going down 10 feet.
Right.
Because our zoning is more onerous in a sense than the fire zoning for the state.
Right.
Okay,
and it's really not even about 2-story, right? Because if you were very fancy and you wanted to store fancy cars and have your car elevator, you
right.
could have the 2 stories and put
Get
cars upstairs.
Get the 35-foot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's really about the fact that it's a habitable space.
It's a habitable space and the state is saying 5 feet is okay. As far as fire code.
Yeah.
The minimum.
Yeah.
Minimum for fire, okay.
Yeah, the
Um,
real trigger is the kitchen or kitchen and the bathroom. You can have one, but you can't have both.
Right, right.
You can pick. Which one.
The fourth one is the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions of the neighborhood. Let's talk about water.
Right. So that's, yeah.
Where would water be going if you take it off of the gutters? Where do you put it that it doesn't necessarily increase the impact of water that is presently part of Wake Street's neighborhood? I mean, if you take it from the gutters, where are you dumping it? Where are
Yeah,
you
no, I-
putting
I
it
took-
down?
I took a small diagram. Basically, I'd be dumping it into the middle of the yard, and the hope is that it takes more time for that surface water to move across the yard before it spills into Barb's yard. So, different landscaping measures could be taken to continue to improve that water permeability and also uptake, but that's not a part of those plans there. It's just, hey, if we're taking water off this roof, where can we put it? And you can't go right, because that goes right in the farmer's yard.
So you're going back to the back of the house.
Yep.
And then you're gonna take it into your yard.
Could you go into the ditch in the front of the house? I mean, one of my friends on Wake Street pumps her yard into the ditch, which then goes into the stormwater sewer, not the sanitary sewer, but the stormwater.
I think the storm is on the other side of the street.
Yeah, I think it's on the church side, isn't it?
Oh, wait, so that thing that she's pumping into is the sanitary sewer?
No,
If
no,
they
no,
can
no.
open
It's just
sewer-
the ditch. Yeah, no, it's just
There's an iron grate and
on this side.
on the,
There's
not
a-
the school side, but the other side.
Okay, it must
on the
cross at some
church
point then.
Yeah.
Okay,
does
yeah,
cross.
It
the
crosses.
outside.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
And that grate is connected to that ditch that runs fairly far down Wake Street. I don't know. I assume it runs as far down as
Yeah.
Europe's.
Yep, down, that's fine.
Yes, the dish for sure. For example, I just run some pump into that dish, but I think it would be challenging to get the right slope on the pipe to meet up with the bottom of the ditch from the garage. I don't know if there are utilities somewhere, like if there's something underneath the road that could be tapped into. So I guess the short answer to your question is, I'm not aware of a way to do that, but I don't, maybe there is a way.
I mean, could it not be done with a pump? Because if it's pumped, it's not as crucial that the drainage be correct, right?
I guess, I mean, I guess it'd be how powerful is the pump and, would the freezing be an issue, like how far underground?
I think one of the things we're missing is, this is gonna be better than what he has now. He's got a roof now dumping the water on both sides of that building. And there's no requirements for him to do anything to that. You can't go to a homeowner and say, you really need to put gutters up. We can't do that. He's gonna make it better. The adverse effect is the opposite. He's gonna improve the water. I think particularly if you move it toward the middle of your property, I think people need to, I mean, at that point, there's not much more you can do, but you're trying to put all the water on your own property. I have a property on Cold Spring. You know why it's called Cold Spring? My neighbor up front is saying, your water that's in your pond, this is my front yard, that's 400 feet from her property is impacting her property. I'm going, there's like 400 feet between us and my pond stays kind of in my area and I'm trying to figure out how to drain it. But,
I mean, I think the concern was the loss of the tree, whether the water flow into the adjoining property would be worse just because of the
Yeah.
loss of the tree. And I don't know how to answer that question.
I guess there's the drainage is more, I mean, you could at least. I mean, if it's going towards the northwestern corner of property. That may help, but I don't know how you can really quantify. The tree and. What's new.
Jimmy, how does your yard slope now? Is it towards the back or is it?
No, generally, if you're standing at Wig Street, looking at the home, the back left of the property, the
Northwest,
corner of the
yeah.
property is arguably the tallest if we're generalizing,
Mhm.
and then, the southeast corner of the property is arguably the lowest. There's definitely some subtleties in there.
Yeah.
But like the house is in the way.
So the concern is the natural drainage wants to go to the southeast corner, but to your point, that even though it wants to go towards the ditch is actually higher. The street is higher than your driveway. You
Correct.
you drop off.
Correct.
Yeah. So you can't, so that a pump maybe would be an option, but it's not a gravity drainage situation. So in how you've diagrammed it, could you drain it to a dry well where you dig a hole and fill it, either a structure or fill a gravel filled dry well in the middle of your yard, basically?
Yeah. certainly.
The problem with that is you're going to dig a hole and it's instantly going to be water. So it's
which
not
is why I haven't dug a hole.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be curious to know, right? If you dug a hole, is it actually, how far down before you hit water? My guess is it's like 4 feet and there's water right there
Yeah.
all year long.
Just needs to be a really wide, shallow.
Well, they do make these like long structures that are like, upside down half culvert kind of things. And with the intent of just holding water, you can pipe to it. So something like that, I think. But to your point, I agree. This is going to be better than what he has now. So I would describe it as like some sort of best practice for that water management would be, and I don't think it needs to be engineered or anything like that, but something's better than nothing.
The last one is the alleged difficulty self-created, always. Okay. Do you have any additional questions or points of discussion before we'll walk through these five determiners and make a decision on each of them?
I think that one point to make that the plans and drawings that I did are certainly completely our intentions, but these are not architect's plans. And if this were to move forward, that is our intent, is to hire a professional to assist us in that process. So what we're seeing today might be slightly different than what may be seen in the future.
Mhm. Any decision we would make, if there are specific concerns, they would be in the decision.
Okay.
And then anything within the decision are things you have to follow. You know, if there are conditions and we label one or two conditions, then those become part of the decision process in addition to just all the code you have to follow.
Right.
You have to follow the code and then any conditions that are set.
And I think
For that.
honestly, someone mentioned that building of this side will also have to go through site plan review.
Oh, I think Tony may have mentioned that.
Tony made a mention, I looked it up on the,
He's online.
here in the code, and what I found was it said if it's another principal building.
Oh.
Now, this, my understanding of the definition, it's a accessory dwelling unit.
Yeah.
Accessory doesn't sound like principal, but it
Right.
would be important to, you know, have say Rick take a look at Rick Ryder, the chair of the planning board, just to confirm. Okay. But, and I wanted to add, it's mostly to address your concern, Barbara, about the slope and building next to a slope. There's some pretty specific requirements about foundations and slope, how close or far away you should build from them. It'll be, I'll have to require a stamp plan for this, so that would be something any good architect, engineer, design professional would include in their plan. You know, take, okay, when you're a slope, how far should we be, how deep should it go?
Right.
Thanks.
Right, or potentially a wall. I mean, it could be
Yeah,
solved by
yeah.
putting a wall on the property line as well.
And then there's mitigation things you have to do in construction based on what you're building there and what they would have to do. Yeah, that's all. Yeah, I was thinking of that when that was brought up. I'm glad you raised it.
Tony, did you unmute? Are you trying to comment?
Yeah, I'm unmuted. I didn't hear the petitioner's question. Was he referring to site plan review if this would be required? Because I'm pretty sure it would be under the two primary dwelling clause in the zoning, which I was trying to pull up. I think it's like section 702 or something to that effect. Which obviously the strange stuff would then be looked at by the planning board. I can pull it up. And Tim, what is our status as the purview of this board in regards to use restriction? Is that something that is that a restriction to address the neighbor's issue? Is that a possibility? Could we say that it's not to be occupied?
No,
basis?
no. The zoning allows for this use. It's a matter of whether we'll let them build the building on the location for the use. I don't think it's appropriate to debate the use. It's not a use that needs special permit. There are uses that come up to zoning where we have to give special permit. Second dwelling is not one of those.
But
Or-
if in
or
general,
50.
if we're granting a variance, we are allowed to put a restriction on it beyond what would be allowed in other statutes, whether it be zoning or just general statutes.
Yes, you can put conditions on. I'm not sure a condition on use is. If you're gonna put a condition on the use and not allow the use, then you're not allowing the project at all. If the project is to create this use, see what I'm saying? I'm not sure we're allowed to rule on the use.
I don't think we are.
No, but he's saying, could we make a condition where you can't use it for people to dwell in it?
Or for example, like you could only use it as a in-law.
Or
apartment, like
limit the
type-
kind of people who can be in. I don't think we can do that.
Right, I don't,
No. Because this doesn't come under that. You want to put a hotel in, that's a special use. You want to put a bed and breakfast, that's a special use.
right.
Yeah, a
and-
second dwelling unit is not special use, it's not.
But
defined.
but generally we could apply a restriction to mitigate the impact of a neighbor upon granting the variance. I mean, that seems like would be naturally what our purpose it would be, right?
I think we can only rule on the use as proposed by the variance. We can't.
Well, I'm saying beyond use, whatever.
Yes, there can be conditions on other things.
Like
yeah.
dra- something like.
Yeah,
If
like-
we said, we could say that we allows something to be, 25 feet high, but given that we're going to let them be closer, we think you should make it a little shorter. I mean, that would be within the purview of the board, correct?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I was just clarifying.
And Tony, that was sections 712.
Oh, it's close.
One principal building on a lot. My only question here is this accessory dwelling unit considered a principal building? It's a principal use for sure. But-
Yeah, there's no, we don't have accessory dwelling units. We only have, which somewhat confusingly, I think are now referred to as second primary units.
So then that would be,
Yeah.
would be to go to site plan review, and the gross floor area is certainly greater than 800 square feet.
Right.
It's higher than 20. So.
I'm looking at it, I read it. I'm just wondering if there are any definitions that clarify the whole principal use. Did they?
No,
I'm looking
I mean,
at
I
the
reckon-
definitions now.
I realized why it was multiple primaries. I remember we didn't add accessory dwelling units because we were again watching the state, and the state is looking at that and potentially creating an accessory dwelling unit law statewide. So we felt it didn't matter yet. Kind of wait to see what happens.
The effect of what we were doing was creating ADUs without the use of that name.
Exactly.
So here's the definition they put in our zoning that is not helpful. Because they decided to address something we're not doing. Here's what the definition is, definition 110. Principal building structures and uses, the chief physical structures and uses of land on a site. There may be more than one principal building, structure, or use on a property. A common example is an apartment complex that includes more than one building with apartments.
Yeah. I mean, it was intentional that we didn't.
That it
address-
didn't address apartments over garages, which is the probably
Well, we just treated,
97% of anything that's gonna happen in our village is gonna be that.
right. But it was just treating all units the same. Units are units regardless of their type.
So this would be considered a unit.
It's a unit.
Okay.
Right.
And it would probably need site plan review. And that would be determined more effectively by the chairman of the planning board. That he
Yeah.
would, that he'd say, it needs to come to us and we'll go through it.
Yeah.
If we grant the variance, then that would be the next step. And they would want. Well, I don't know what they would want. I'm not gonna speak to what they want, whether they want more detail than what you already have. That would come down to the negotiating of how planning boards work. That's why I'm not on it. We just try and deal with the law and interpret it for you. All right, can we go through the 5 things if I can find my paper again? Let's go through and make a determination. Whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by granting the area variance. I say no. It will not. No.
No.
Everybody's agreed it's a no. B, whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than the area variance. I say no. I
I'm sort of neutral because I think there's an endless possibility that could be explored,
Yeah.
but it's pointless because they're all going to be similar impact or even greater
Right.
impact.
So that being the case, I
Yeah.
follow you and say.
No,
Yeah.
They're feasible other ways, but well, not really. feasible.
Yeah, the feasible is the operative.
Right, I mean, that's true. There are possibilities, but they're not feasible.
so you're saying a no?
I'll agree. No.
Okay, no, I mean, you don't have to. We can go-
No, I
go
mean, it-
3 and 1. We can go.
That worked for me, that one.
We.
I
we-
know, at
we-
the time.
We can go whatever way you feel most comfortable. Whether the requested area variance is substantial. I say it's yes.
Yes.
We all agree it's yes, it's substantial, okay? Whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. I say no if, here's the condition, if the water from the gutter system is best practice in moving it away from adjacent properties. Directing it away from adjacent property.
I agree. And also just the treatment of the landscape between the building and the property line. I don't know what that looks like, but this, if it's a planning board issue, they can certainly weigh in on that as well. In terms of stabilizing that.
Yeah, adding that in.
Well, I'm asking, do you want that phrase in our, well, we would add that into the final determination.
Yeah,
I'll just
as a
stick it in.
condition.
I'm saying if, for me to say, I'm saying there's no adverse impact if mitigation is part of a condition.
I'll just make
That's what I'm
You
saying.
can keep it general like that. Yeah,
Maybe
I
we
agree.
can
I
add the
agree.
right words at the end.
If we actually put it in a decision, then we'll put it in the words that we want.
Okay,
So I'm saying no
Say no.
No.
and no. Okay, so 4 no's on that. Last one is the alleged difficulty self-created. I say yes.
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 We all agree it's yes. Okay. Now, can I have a motion, whether to grant a variance or to deny the variance?
I move we grant it with conditions as discussed.
Grant the variance with the condition of best practices for water drainage.
away from the property.
Okay. Because this decision then would give planning board the parameters that they need to look at to get the specifics nailed down of how to do
Just say
that.
best practice for water mitigation then, or
Water
drainage?
mitigation.
Okay,
Yeah, best practice for water mitigation.
and.
And slope stabilization.
Good.
Ooh,
Slope stabilization. We often don't do things so intelligently.
exciting. Okay.
I am a professional. I have to use the right lingo.
I speak for a living as well. But I try and get it to a 5th grade level.
Okay,
So we have a motion. Can I have a second?
I'll think.
All right, Mike seconds it. The motion is that we grant the variance of the 5-foot setback with the conditions of best practices for water mitigation and slope stabilization.
Variance allowing,
Yeah, allowing 5 foot.
yep,
because width is.
thank you.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed to
Aye.
say? Motion carries. It,
Then you have this-
It's a little weird. No, not the
No.
property. Going to look at it requires an open meeting notice.
yeah, we have issues where
We can drive.
we drive by
but we
often.
Cannot actually stop and look at it without calling
Yeah,
a public.
yeah.
meeting.
Yeah.
Because I used to do that.
Yeah, we
and
had
I
some
found that
issues
I was
about
not
that.
allowed to.
Also going onto the property, right? I mean,
Oh,
to
no, I
dr-
wasn't even going on to it.
no, I know, but
The
we
way
can
they
drive
phrased
by,
it in
but
that Ethics.
Yeah, yeah,
Section that
yeah,
I
yeah.
attended was.
We're not
that-
supposed to like walk around the building in the backyard and that whole, we
Yeah,
can't do
yeah.
that.
Definitely.
Unless we have our fake badge. Zoning Board of
yeah.
Appeals badge. I'm sorry. Hey, people should then come to these meetings and see how enjoyable they are.
Right.
All right, do we have any other business? That anyone knows? Any old business?
No, sir.
Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Moved.
Dave, can I have a second?
Second.
Second, Noah. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed the same. Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned.